Welcome to the Yes You Coaching podcast. I'm your host, Anna Manning, and the owner and founder of Yes You Coaching. And today we're going to be talking about being sensitive and being in your job. But first, I have an invitation for you. I currently have a program which is open. We're starting on the 3rd of April. And it's my kind of flagship program. It's the culmination of all the work that I do with people and all the skills and knowledge that I've gained over my time confidence coaching. And it's a program where people come together to really deep dive into all of the stuff that we talk about here on the podcast. So what are the confidence challenges that you have? What's creating them? And then what can you do to solve for them, and what can you do to remove them so that you can feel more confident at work? And I run it a couple of times a year, and every time the people who go through it amaze me. There are a couple of episodes actually. One, Nicola Experiences Confident at Work and Zoe Experiences Confident at Work. So you can go back in the podcast annals and find those. But essentially, this program is a place for you if you want to grow your confidence at work. And if you want to, with me, supported by me, take what you hear here and actually apply it and see the change in your work life. Feel the change in terms of your level of confidence in your work life. And we have two options for that program. So the first one, which is new, which I'm quite excited about, is we have a group option within that program. So when you join the group, you get 3 months of weekly group coaching with me and 3 90-minute trainings that are going to go through all of the things that we struggle with in terms of our confidence and the things that get in the way, and learn all the skills and strategies that you need to build up, the stuff you need to stop doing, the stuff you need to start doing. And then we're going to have time for coaching every week, which is going to help you troubleshoot, help you with your particular challenges, problems, help you think about solutions over the course of the 3 months. So that's the first option within the program, the group option. And the second option is the individual option. So if you want to do all of that, but you also want to spend some personal one-on-one time with me, you can. So that's the individual option. I will leave a link to the program details on the show notes. So if you're interested, go pick up I know you're probably listening to this on your phone, just pick up your phone now and tap into the episode. And in there, you'll see the show notes. And in there, you'll see, the first thing you'll see is a link which takes you to the program details. Click on that and just have a look through, and maybe pause this for a minute, because this is your opportunity to actually do this, not just listen to it, not just think about it, actually do it. 2023. This is the year where you could feel a lot more confident at work, and imagine the compounding impact of that for the rest of your career. I actually had one woman in one of the early programs who was like, she was nearing retirement age, and she was like, what if I'd known this years ago? I was like, yeah, imagine, like, you did well anyway. Imagine if you'd have known this years ago. So wherever you are in your career, if you like this podcast, you will love this program. And I would love you to be in this program. The doors are wide open and I'm welcoming people in. So whether it's a group option or an individual option, and actually the group option is probably too good value, I suspect. But it's my first time running it, so let's see how we go. So if you're thinking, oh, it sounds expensive, or I don't know, can't afford it, then come and have a look, because you might be very pleasantly surprised. So that is the end of my sales pitch. I really want to sell you on the idea that you can feel quite different at work, because I know that you can. So I think it would be remiss of me not to tell you that. I have the skills, the experience, and the program. All you need to do is bring your brain and a willingness to get involved, and you can do it too. All right, on with the episode. So being sensitive and being in your job or being at work. Now, the reason I decided to do this episode is because I would describe myself as being sensitive. I think I'm very sensitive, and some people who know me might be a bit surprised by that. They might be like, "What? You're not the most sensitive person I've ever met, Anna." But I think being sensitive, or me saying I'm sensitive, it could mean different things, right? And I looked at the dictionary definition for sensitive, and it had two meanings. One which maybe you would identify with more than the other, or maybe you identify with both. And the first one was quick to detect or respond to slight changes, signals, or influences. And the second one was having or displaying a quick and delicate appreciation of others' feelings. But the first one, quick to detect or respond to slight changes, signals, or influences, I think that can mean in relation to our own situations. And after quick to detect or respond to changes, signals, or influences, I think for me, what that leads to is when you detect those changes, or when I detect those changes, or when something has happened, I feel them very deeply. And you might be the same. You might think, yeah, I feel things a lot. To be honest, I kind of wonder if everyone does. But we all feel it looks different on the surface. Some people display it more. Maybe some people just keep it inside a little bit more. But we're all feeling beings. And our workplaces are not always the easiest places to be. Even if they're good workplaces, they're full of trials and tribulations, and especially my last job, which was actually full of trials, like actual legal trials. But even if that isn't your job, they're full of challenge and, tricky relationships and resource constraints and difficult messages. All of those things are, they are just our bread and butter in our work life. So it stands to reason that emotion is going to come up with that. And if you think of yourself as sensitive, I do think of myself as sensitive, but if you do, or if you're kind of keying into that and thinking, yeah, I do feel quite a bit of emotion at work, this episode is for you. I think it's inevitable that we're going to feel emotion at work. And when I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking of some examples of where I look back on my own career so far, illustrious as it's been, and I think about some of the times where I felt extremely sensitive. And the first one that I thought was around taking feedback, like negative feedback or constructive criticism, or what the shit sandwich, whatever it is people call it. And back in my earlier days, not in my latter days, because I really worked on it, but in my earlier days, I found that kind of feedback excruciatingly painful. When I first became a manager in my old NHS legal world, my boss Dominic, who was also extremely sensitive as a person, would take me aside frequently and be like, "You're being too heavy-handed about this. Like, you've got to be a bit more careful with that. You've got to." And it was excruciating to always be given that feedback. And I needed it, right? I needed to hear his feedback. And you know what? He was good enough to just give it to me straight and in private. He did it in the best possible way. But that didn't stop it being really difficult for me. And I felt so sensitive, but I found that kind of feedback excruciating. I felt like I was very sensitive in relation to that, and I found it very difficult. And I coach people now who find that difficult too, so I feel their pain. And another one was around making mistakes. And I can remember a particular situation when I was working at I was working at a law firm in London, and I used to work in medical negligence work, so basically suing like doctors and hospitals and stuff. And I made a mistake, basically. I was preparing some papers for court, and I kind of lodged this claim with the court, and I left a name off it. I didn't even know that you had to put this, I didn't even know that you had to do the thing I hadn't done, but I didn't do it. And that had repercussions. And I felt terrible for weeks. Weeks. That was before I ever did any of this work. I don't think that I would handle it in the same way now that I did then. But I just felt so sensitive. It totaled me. It knocked my confidence. It was so hard for me to deal with. And I have clients who tell me the same thing, that when they have something that's a failure or mistake or goes wrong, they feel it so deeply. They feel really sensitive around it. And if you're like me on this, you're someone who needs a lot of care and support and strategies around stuff like this. Because it's harder when you're more sensitive. I also remember another example. This was when I was working at the law firm in Sheffield, and we were taking a particular case to trial. And it was a bit of a, it wasn't a dead cert that we were going to win, but it was the right thing to do to take it to trial. And we did. And I spent like a week in Brighton, actually in the snow. I didn't even know it snowed in Brighton. It was freezing cold. It wasn't very romantic at all. And we gave it our best shot. And then, I don't know, weeks later, we got the judgment. And I can remember now to the day when we got that judgment, I was like sitting under this blanket for an entire day. Oh my God. I was like, I just felt terrible. And it hit me really hard. And maybe somebody, I guess it would have been disappointing for anyone, right? Don't get me wrong. Everyone wants to win their trial and make their fees and do a good job for the client and all of that. But it was just, I found it so hard. And I think partly perhaps because I'm quite sensitive. And yeah, I can see myself sitting under this blanket, like staring into space, and my like then husband and our housemate Tom like trying to talk me around and like talk positive to me. And Tom was so sweet. He bought me this little gold lint bunny to try and cheer me up. Bless him. But yeah, I mean, and they're just a few examples that stick out in my mind. I know there's going to be loads more from my career, and I know there's probably loads in your career too. And if you can identify with what I'm saying around, if you would say, oh yeah, I'm quite sensitive at work, there's probably things that are lodged in your brain that happened that you still feel something about, and still, or they still at least give you pause. And maybe you're experiencing something right now at work where you're struggling because you're a sensitive soul and you take things to heart, and you find things tricky. And I have had like a few kind of different thoughts about this that I wanted to share with you. And it's my kind of, I'm going to say ramblings, but I have thought about this, but it's just an episode to kind of explore the fact that if you are sensitive and you are in a job, if you are sensitive and you are at work, dealing with a job, dealing with challenges, dealing with people, dealing with clients, dealing with internal stakeholders, dealing with challenges, dealing with resources, all of that, it is not always going to be a nice, easy ride. Not every day is going to be like, oh yeah, it was great today and it's all like rainbows and daisies and woohoo. No. If you're sensitive to the stuff that goes on around you, it's going to be not that easy all the time. And the first thing I really thought about is how we experience it. So, very often when I'm coaching people, they'll tell me a story about something that has impacted them, something that they've found hard, or there is an emotion associated with the story that they're telling me, with the thing that, you know, that has happened or that they want coaching on. And very often they're making it mean something about them, not the fact that the thing happened. So let's say I'm coaching someone and they tell me, you know, this person said this thing to me in a meeting. And afterwards, I was just totaled. I went away. I was really emotional. I felt terrible for the rest of the day. I'm like, okay. And when we dig around into it, they are assuming that that means the fact that they got emotional about something, the fact that they were sensitive, they're assuming that means there is some fundamentally flawed thing about them, which is why they are like that. And I think that's what I used to feel like. Instead of just assuming that we are human, like feeling beings, and maybe this is associated with a really good part of us, which, you know, cares and is receptive and, you know, notices things, we assume, oh, I can't cope. I should be able to be thicker skinned. I should be, you know, tough. I shouldn't care. Like all of this and all of these stories that get like layered on the top of our experience. So our experience is crap because somebody said something to us that made us feel really crap. And then the way that we interpret that experience feels even more crap because we're assuming that it means, oh, I'm not cut out for this. You know, people like me can't do this. I shouldn't feel like this. No one else is like this. I should, you know, buck up and carry on and all of that. And oh, the experience was bad enough already, but then layering all that on top of it, dreadful, not helpful, and probably not particularly kind. Like, I know you wouldn't do that to anyone else, but you might be like, yeah, I do that. Even recently, I had something that I was trying to do and it just was a failure. It just didn't work. And afterwards, I was devastated by it. And then I was really annoyed with myself for being devastated by it. And it took my coach to actually point that out to me. And I was like, oh, yeah. So not only am I devastated, but I'm also being a bit of a dick to myself on top of that. Well, probably not helping. Probably going to make the situation worse. But, right, I do this stuff with people all the time, and I was doing that. But just notice if you do that. Like, what do we do with this sensitivity and when things impact us? How do we deal with it? Most of us are really well attuned to how to deal with it when someone else is like that. And actually, there's a whole episode about this called How to Feel Better on a Bad Day. And this episode, like, really walks you through how to feel better when you're having a bad day, surprisingly. But in that episode and here, it's important to talk about how we take care of ourselves and how we look after ourselves when we are sensitive and when stuff happens at work. Most of us, and this is what I used to do, would be like, push it down, put a happy front on, be like, oh, well, I should just be able to get over it, and like plow on, like force ourselves on to doing whatever we're doing. And then we're still noodling over it in our brain like 3 weeks later. Oh, God, that thing that happened. Oh, it hasn't actually gone anywhere. It just like keeps reoccurring like a flashback in our brains. And my experience of working with people and myself is that the reason that stuff stays around for so long, the reason that we seem to, you know, ruminate over stuff and hold on to stuff is that we don't really allow ourselves to feel it at the time. And there may be scenarios where you're in the middle of a meeting or something and you really have to keep your game face on until the end of it, or maybe even until you go home. But if you kind of stuff it down and shove it away and refuse to feel it, my experience is that it will come back and bite you on the ass. maybe in a moment that you don't want it to. And I also think that it's a cycle of creating more and more and more sensitivity. That's what was happening for me when I found things difficult and when I used to get emotional, but I would shove it away and put it down in a box. The more I did that, weirdly, the more sensitive I became. And the more frustrated I would get with myself for being sensitive. So it was like somebody was punching me in the face and then that hurt. And I was annoyed with the fact that that hurt. So I punched myself in the face a bit more. And then the next time somebody punched me in the face, metaphorically, not literally, of course, I was even more sensitive than before. So then I would punch myself in the face even more because I was frustrated with the fact that I was sensitive and that it hurt when someone punched me in the face. And I've never put it like that before, but now I'm saying it like that. I'm like, oh, wow, Anna, what a way to go. What a way to deal with yourself. But I share that because that might be how you're dealing with yourself. And it might not be the best way of dealing with yourself. I found it was not the best way for me of dealing with myself, even though I still sometimes slide into that way of dealing with myself. Often a client will come to me and be like, I just need to care less about this, that, or the other. And I'm like, okay, I've heard that one a million times. I just need to care less. And the reality is that you actually can care less. You can. There's work to do. There's work to do, but you can care less. But that is the kind of go-to default in people's brains. Like, I am sensitive. The solution is I need to care less. And I want to kind of pause you there if you think the solution is for you to care less. I think the solution is for you to care about yourself more. In those moments where you are sensitive, you don't worry about caring less. Just worry about caring more about yourself. This isn't about the other person. Well, it may be. But in this scenario, this is like about turning it back in on you. Because imagine me, the sensitive soul that I am. I go to my partner and I'm like, oh, Jamie, something happened and I'm really upset about it. And he was like, you need to care less. What? I would be like, you need to like go to school for people to work out how to like talk to people properly. But and that would be like a terrible way of him to deal for him to deal with me. And you know what? He's not that daft. He would never deal with me like that. But that is how I used to deal with myself. And that when you're saying to me, I just need to care less, that is how you're dealing with yourself. Imagine someone said to you, yeah, you know what, I know you're really sensitive about that, but you just need to care less. You'd be like, fuck you. And I'm glad that if you would be like, fuck you, because what that means is there is like a loving witness living inside you that's like defending you and being like, no, fuck you if you think that's the way it should go down. I am in this situation, something has hurt me. And that fuck you is like, this deserves attention and this deserves acknowledgement and this deserves validation. And that is what I would say to you around this. Only when I started taking my sensitivity seriously, and actually, this may or may not be helpful to you, but to me, it's helpful that I kind of say, oh, yeah, well, I just am quite sensitive about things. Sometimes things really impact me. Once I started saying that, instead of being like squirreling it away and just pretending that I was like tough as old boots, it actually was better. But not only that, once I started saying that, I could actually attend to my own sensitivity. So instead of just telling myself, oh, you should just be able to get over it, or you need to care less, instead I would be like, oh, yeah, you're feeling this. You're feeling this thing really deeply because you're a sensitive person. And in this moment, this you feel like that sensitive spot's just been punched. Now imagine I go to my partner and be like, this awful thing happened and I'm feeling really upset. Well, I would expect him to tilt his head to one side and say, "Oh, Anna, oh, you're feeling upset, like, oh, listen to me. Oh, yeah, I can see why you would be upset by that. Validate me. Acknowledge what I'm saying to him. Probably like open up his arms, give me a cuddle, give me some comfort." And when it's somebody else who's experiencing a moment of sensitivity, that is how most of us do deal with it. But when it's us, we tell ourselves we should be tougher, we shouldn't be as sensitive, we should stuff it down, we should just care less. Emotionless corporate robots are the order of the day. But what if they're not? What if we, the sensitive ones, are in fact the order of the day? It's not easy to be sensitive and deal with all the challenges of a career and work and all the rest of life. It's not easy. And what do we need when things are easy? We need acknowledgement, we need validation, we need understanding, we need comfort. And what I found was that I could learn to give that to myself first and foremost. That doesn't mean that I don't need that from other people. We're all in community and we all need connection and understanding from others. But we can also do it for ourselves by not making ourselves wrong for being sensitive, for admitting that maybe we are sometimes, and for saying, "Oh, that's really upset you, Anna. It's really totaled you, that, hasn't it?" I have one client who she just has to say it out loud. It's really all she has to do to feel better. She just has to be like, how are you feeling? She asks herself, and then she's like, "I am pissed off. I am frustrated. Right? Surprisingly effective. So maybe that's something you could do. And maybe next time you're kind of pushing it down or putting it in a box or telling yourself to get a grip or whatever, you might just take a moment and be like, "How are you feeling right now?" And let yourself answer. Don't try and talk positive over it. Don't try and slap a happy face on it. Don't resist the temptation to be like, "Well, it could be a lot worse." Because let's face it, when has that ever made anyone feel better? Probably on the first of never. Decide how you want to handle yourself when a sensitivity is being pushed or punched. I actually have a specific exercise which I did in the summer camp that we did last year that walks you through if you feel like it was about being emotional actually, but I think it's the same. Sensitivity brings up emotions. And it helps you think, or it kind of walks you through how you handle being sensitive or how you handle emotion now and how you could handle it, how you want other people to handle you in it, and how you could handle yourself in it. And it's really kind of step by step. So let me know if you want that, and I'll email it out to you because I think it's really, really, really helpful. It may be harder to be a more sensitive person in the workplace, but my God, do we need sensitive people in our workplaces? Do we need sensitive people in our world? Yes, we bloody do. So if you're one of them, we need you. We need you in our workplace. We need you in our world. We need you in our communities. We need you in our families. But you also need you to know how to care for that sensitivity so that you can keep going. And if you want my help to deal with that, it's part of what we do in the Confident at Work program. I gave you all the details at the beginning. Come and join us. I've found this stuff to be revolutionary in my life. Maybe it could be in yours too. Okay, that's all I have for you this week. See you in the next episode.